Well everyone, something big is happening. China is quietly setting the stage for what could become the most important financial shift in modern history. One that has the potential to completely rewrite the future of the US dollar. Beijing has a plan, bold, ambitious, and eerily familiar. They are reaching for the exact same playbook that the United States used nearly half a century ago to rise to global dominance. And if China pulls this off, it won't just speed up the global move away from the dollar. It will tear away one of the single strongest reasons the world has ever had to hold US currency in the first place. Here's how. America's financial empire didn't just appear out of thin air. It was built on oil, and it started with a deal struck decades ago in Saudi Arabia. Washington promised to guarantee the kingdom's security, and in return, Saudi Arabia agreed to sell its oil only in US dollars. That deal created the Petrodollar system. And from that moment on, every country that needed energy, which meant every country on Earth, also needed dollars. Oil and the dollar became inseparable, and that simple fact cemented America's place at the center of the global economy. But times change, and the world is changing fast. Oil is still important, but it is no longer the future. Renewable energy is rising, demand is shifting, and one nation has surged far ahead of the rest, China. And that is why Beijing's next move is so powerful. They are preparing to use their dominance in renewable energy to build an entirely new financial order. Instead of backing global trade with oil, they want to back it with electricity. Imagine a system where the Chinese yuan isn't just another currency. It's tied directly to the electricity that powers the modern world. An electricity-backed renminbi, a rival to the petrodollar. If this works, it could flip world trade upside down and give China the kind of financial dominance that America has enjoyed since the 1970s. Think about it. Oil is limited, unstable, and increasingly outdated. But electricity is everywhere. Every nation needs it, every day, and demand is only exploding with the rise of electric cars, renewable economies, and artificial intelligence. Unlike oil, electricity is universal, and China is building the infrastructure to make itself the hub of this new system. They're expanding cross-border energy projects, building high-voltage transmission lines, creating massive regional power grids, and launching renewable mega-projects at a pace the world has never seen. And in exchange for this electricity, China could demand payment in yuan. That would force other countries to hold yuan reserves, pushing China's currency deeper into global trade. Long-term contracts would stabilize the system, and electricity could become the anchor of a new financial order. An energy-backed yuan replacing the oil-backed dollar. For this to happen, two things are required. First, China must be able to produce and deliver massive amounts of energy to the world. Second, the United States would have to lose its grip on energy dominance. Both of those conditions are no longer theoretical. They're already becoming reality. China has spent years preparing for this moment, recognizing that energy is the cornerstone of the 21st century. Meanwhile, the United States has grown complacent, trapped in old assumptions, leaning on narratives of exceptionalism instead of preparing for the energy future that is now unfolding. Inside America, the cracks are already showing. Electricity demand is exploding, driven in large part by artificial intelligence. Data centers, the very core of the AI revolution, devour unimaginable amounts of power. Earlier this year, the Trump administration announced the $500 billion Stargate project with OpenAI, a massive bet on America's AI future. But already the project is running into a brick wall. The demand for energy is outpacing the capacity of the American grid. Simply put, the US power grid cannot keep up. This is not a short-term glitch. It is the result of decades of failure by both parties to plan for the long term. Since 2005, America's electricity generation has barely grown. Think about that. 2 full decades of technological breakthroughs, yet virtually no new growth in the on-resource that makes all of it possible. Meanwhile, China has been building relentlessly, adding more power capacity year after year after year. Washington talks about competing with China in AI, but how can that competition even exist if the United States cannot provide enough electricity to run the AI models themselves? This isn't just theory. Chinese experts who visited the US were stunned by how fragile and outdated the American grid has become. Their conclusion was sobering. The race may already be over, and here's the bigger problem. In the US, large infrastructure projects depend on private investors who want their money back in 3 to 5 years. But power grids take a decade or more to build and pay off. That math simply doesn't work. In China, it's different. The state directs massive investment into energy projects before the demand even arrives, accepting the risks, knowing some may fail, but ensuring that the capacity is there when it's needed. That difference in approach is enormous. It means China is building the grid of the future while the United States struggles to keep the lights on. And that is the world we are heading into. A future where the dollar's dominance no longer rests on oil, and where electricity, the lifeblood of AI, of modern economies, of everything, becomes the new anchor of global finance. China is not just preparing for that future, they are building it. The only question is whether America can even keep up, or whether the financial center of the world is about to shift east, permanently. The story of energy today isn't just about running AI data centers or keeping the lights on. It's about something much bigger. The future of mobility, global trade, and who controls the foundation of 21st century power. Right now, the United States is staring down a challenge it has never truly prepared for: the explosive rise of electric vehicles. In 2024, global EV sales hit more than 17 million, an increase of over 25% from just the year before. And by 2035, nearly half of all cars sold worldwide are projected to be electric. Yet America's entire infrastructure remains stuck in the past, built around gasoline and diesel. Charging networks remain patchy and unreliable. The power grid is overstressed and outdated, and the country simply doesn't have the capacity to handle the tidal wave of demand that widespread EV adoption will create. These failures didn't appear overnight. They are the result of decades of complacency. Decades where cheap oil lulled Washington into believing energy dominance was permanent. That strategy may have worked in the 1970s when the world's economy was built on petroleum, but in 2025 the landscape has changed. Despite clear warnings, the United States is still clinging to its old drill baby drill mentality, pouring billions into outdated natural gas and fossil fuels, expensive, polluting, and increasingly irrelevant forms of energy. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, China saw this shift coming years ago and quietly positioned itself to lead the next great energy revolution. In fact, this year alone, China has unveiled projects that could redefine what's possible in global power generation. It became the first nation on Earth to bring a thorium reactor online, a nuclear technology once dismissed as experimental, now proven and vastly safer and more efficient than traditional uranium-based reactors. At the same time, China began constructing the Yarlung Tsangpo mega dam in Tibet, a project so vast it will dwarf every power station before it. When complete, this single dam is expected to generate around 300 billion kilowatt-hours annually. To put that number into perspective, the entire United Kingdom consumed about 259 billion kilowatt-hours in 2023. One single Chinese power plant could outproduce the electricity demand of the world's sixth-largest economy. That is not just impressive, it's historic. And these are only two examples from a single year. But China's ambitions stretch far beyond its borders. Energy isn't just about powering homes or cars anymore. It's about shaping financial systems, forging alliances, and shifting the balance of global trade. Beijing has turned infrastructure into a powerful tool not only for development, but also for internationalizing its currency, the renminbi. Take Laos, for instance. Until recently, the small Southeast Asian nation had to funnel every transaction with China through the US dollar, converting its local currency into dollars first, then into renminbi, with the dollar skimming a profit at every step. But after signing a $145 billion clean energy deal with a Chinese firm, Laos can now settle directly in renminbi. That means fewer costs, greater independence, and a boost to the renminbi's role as a global currency. The pattern doesn't stop there. In Brazil, China's state grid built a 2,000-kilometer transmission line to carry hydropower from deep in the Amazon all the way to the country's industrialized southeastern coast. Projects like this do more than deliver electricity. They export a financial model that bypasses the US dollar entirely. By tying energy development to renminbi settlement, China is reshaping the financial rules of the game. Across the global south, these kinds of projects are multiplying. In Ghana, China recently delivered a hydropower station on the Konguri River, nicknamed the Three Gorges of West Africa. The deal wasn't just about building a dam. It came as a complete package. Turbines, transformers, transmission towers, everything needed to make the station operational. And when it went online, it supplied 1/3 of Ghana's total electricity demand overnight. Beyond that, China didn't just walk away. They left behind a hydro training center, trained more than 800 local technicians, and ensured the project created a generation of skilled workers capable of running it. This is how Beijing builds influence, not just with concrete and steel, but with knowledge, expertise, and lasting partnerships. Contrast that with the United States. American firms often hesitate when asked to build in extreme terrains like Angola's mountains, Myanmar's dense forests, or Pakistan's highlands. When they don't refuse outright, They inflate the costs so high that projects collapse before breaking ground. China, on the other hand, has decades of experience delivering mega projects in the harshest environments on Earth. What the US views as impossible or unprofitable, China executes with efficiency. This isn't just engineering, it's strategy. And it's one of the reasons Beijing now dominates energy infrastructure across the developing world. As global electricity demand continues to skyrocket, China's dominance in next-generation power opens the door to something even bigger, a new kind of currency standard. For over half a century, the US dollar has been propped up by two great pillars, oil and US Treasury bonds. But what happens when oil is no longer the foundation of energy? What happens when electricity, not petroleum, becomes the backbone of the global economy? That's the world China is preparing for. By producing renewable energy more cheaply than oil and tying it to the renminbi, Beijing is laying the groundwork for an electricity-backed currency, one that could rival and even surpass the dollar. This isn't science fiction. The shift is already happening. Every new power plant China builds abroad that settles in renminbi chips away at the dollar's influence. Every new transmission line, every hydropower project, every direct financial settlement pushes the global economy closer to a future where electricity, not oil, underpins financial supremacy. The result is nothing less than a seismic realignment of power. The dollar grows weaker. The renminbi grows stronger. And electricity, the most fundamental force of modern civilization, becomes the new anchor of global trade. The electricity-backed renminbi isn't some distant dream. It is the next frontier, the financial weapon that could define who holds power for decades to come. And if there's one message you should take from this, it's that the world is changing faster than most people realize. The United States is clinging